Hi Nick, it's January 17th. Loved your video yesterday, and speaking of music, which was eschewed during its time by the man, but will eventually go on to be a classic, I want to talk about Pink Floyd today. So I could go on and on about their music. It's not quite my domain. I want to talk about one of my favorite album covers and titles of all time, which is the classic Dark Side of the Moon. I think I can add some scientific context to it. The album itself is considered to be one of the greatest of all times. It's sort of like a philosophical meditation on life, legacy, and death. But it also does have some very blatant references to science, namely the cover and title. Luckily, these two just so happen to correspond to my two specialties, physics and space. To run through this stuff, I think I'm going to need something to write on. Let's start with the cover. This is based off of Isaac Newton's prism experiment. The experiment itself was landmark and helped physicists learn that light was made up of many different colors. Before it was carried out, the prevailing wisdom for why a prism generated colors was some hoity-toity idea that it introduced impurities to the light, causing that pattern. We now know that separate frequencies of light are bent at different angles when moving to and from different density materials. For example, light is bent more strongly when it is violet than red. All other colors are bent at angles between these two. Newton added a second prism which undoes this effect of the first and combines the light back into a single white beam, thus proving that these are constituent components. This led to the idea that colors are generated by the reflection and absorption of light from materials. Later, the astronomer Herschel used this technique, along with some strategically placed thermometers, to discover even more frequencies of light. Physicists slowly built on this simple framework, and a lot of the theories about the universe used by astronomers today can trace some of their roots back to this one. Speaking of astronomers, the title Dark Side of the Moon isn't winning any awards in science anytime soon. That's because there isn't a dark side of the moon. One face of the moon always faces the Earth. It's weird. We kind of know why it happens, but that could be its own video, so let's just take that fact at face value. This cleaves the moon into two easy to differentiate sections, the near and far sides. The name dark side is commonly given to the far side of the moon. It gets plenty of sunlight. The dark part of the name just refers to the fact that humans never saw it until the beginning of the manned spaceflight program. This fact isn't quite as groundbreaking as Newton discovering the basis of what could become the field of electromagnetism, but it's still cool that humans got our acts together enough to get to the moon in the first place. It's also interesting to note that Dark Side of the Moon was written during the period of time, the Apollo era, when humans were actually gallivanting around on the moon. So there's a little bit of influence there from the actual space program itself. This album is a pretty cool exploration of what it means to be human, particularly in an era when the definition of what humanity was and what humanity could do was changing. I like it a lot, but hopefully you might give it a listen on your flight. I'll see you tomorrow. Enjoy your time in Houston.